parentheses, in the event of conflict, the specifications contained in Chapter 240, subdivision and land development shall govern.
Right.
So you put that in both. So you do put a lot of credibility and a lot of weight on our laws.
Right, and the law requires, since we're talking about preliminary land development applications, we're not talking about final. So again, the law on this point is equally as clear. For issues that require permitting from outside governmental agencies, whether that be DEP, PennDOT, the Montgomery County Conservation District, when you're talking about a preliminary land development application, the application has to be reviewed, and if found to be compliant after an iterative process, not just one and done, after an iterative process, if the application is found to be substantively deficient, then deny it. If it is compliant but requires permits and approvals from outside agencies, the law requires that the application be approved, subject to the condition that the applicant go and get those outside governmental approvals. That is the reason for the distinction between preliminary approval and final approval. You cannot deny a preliminary land development application, because outside permits and approvals haven't been obtained yet.
Well, we also can't drive a car without wheels either.
I don't understand the comment.
Well, it makes sense here. Well, what our big concern here is...
Well, you're not deciding if you want public water. You want public water, this is all irrelevant.
What we're doing is following our saldo, and it states that we want to take that no preliminary plan would be accepted without this water quality ordinance.
The preliminary plan has been accepted. It's been reviewed. As far as I'm aware, and again, please forgive me, I haven't committed all of the review letters to memory, chapter and verse, but as far as I'm aware, this is the first time this issue is being raised after an application that was submitted on November 1st. So the application's been accepted, it's been reviewed. The applicant, I keep stressing this, the applicant must be given the opportunity to revise and resubmit and provide any additional information that the township is requesting.
Have you
It's
done a
not a
water
gray
budget?
area of the
Have you done a water budget analysis? No, we are in a special region in the Delaware Valley River Basin Commission where our water can be affected very greatly, this whole area in the Brunswick Rock Formation.
And if the township makes the determination that to address these concerns, which are legitimate, these are legitimate substantive concerns that the township and the resident have, and that the best way to address those concerns would be to provide public water, then, as Tim said, that's what the applicant will do. What we're asking for is feedback in that regard. Is it the township's preference that this subdivision be serviced by public water as opposed to wells? If so, we can make that adjustment.
And again, I would like to know where that water would come from.
Yeah, but it's been 3 months, this is the first time we're getting a question. We're happy to get answers, but we gotta know what the questions are.
Are we allowed to ask a question?
We will open it up to the public shortly, yep. Did you have anything else you wanted to ask?
Yeah, but if the sewer, my concern would be that if we had public sewer and the township was to take over it, that's a situation that I think is not good for the township. Frederick living is basically independent of the township, and that, to me, is the best situation. My biggest fear is that we've got a lot of people, a lot of large groups, Frederick living, the development, taking water out. We don't want to bring public water in. Yeah, I have a lot of reservations about all of this.
Respectfully, maybe I'm misunderstanding. What that comment suggests to my mind is that you have concerns about the development pulling water from individual wells or a few wells on the property, but you also are unwilling to consider the alternative of public water because of the impact that might have on future developability in the township.
Yeah, we don't want, we want to stay rural.
Yes.
That's the biggest point. We want to stay rural.
Understood, but the property owner is still entitled to proceed with appropriate use of the property in accordance with the ordinances.
Are you ready to let the public speak?
I have a couple more questions here. Will the project lead to a major modification of the existing municipal administrative organizations within the municipal government?
I can't imagine how. I don't, where is that coming from?
Well, I want to know what the answer is. You know, will the
Is
project lead
there
to
an
a major
ordinance?
modification of the existing municipal administrative organizations within the municipal government?
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I kind of think you're asking about an effect on public services.
Correct.
Okay, trying to translate. The question is, what effect is it gonna have on public services here in the township?
Well, it's 280 homes. It will have some impact. You're going to have new residents living in new houses and a new development within the township. Whether or not that constitutes a need for changes in the organizational structure, will there need to be new police officers hired, a new municipal authority created? I can't imagine for 260 to 280 homes. But I mean, I'm not prepared to answer that question, but my general gut answer is the change in the organizational structure of the township. No, the township's still gonna have a governing board, and it's still gonna have a planning commission. I don't know that the township would need to create any new boards, commissions, or authorities to address this development.
Well, we would have to have a sewer authority. Would that be correct?
No. If public sewer is the option that is pursued, there could simply be an intermunicipal agreement between Upper Frederick and New Hanover to send the sewage flows to New Hanover, right? We would be sending sewage
Well,
flows to New
I am
Hanover.
familiar with New Hanover, very, very much so, and, you know, they're not really interested in that.
My
They actually
understanding is
are,
that
I
they
know
are.
for them and they are.
Really? Do you have agreements with that?
How can I do an agreement between you and New Hanover? The last board didn't want it.
Well, it's not a matter of whether we want it or not, it's just a matter of I'm trying to establish this.
No,
I
it doesn't matter
understand.
if you want it. I met with New Hanover, they don't want that, they're not, this doesn't impact them, this is in your township.
Well, it will affect them if they're gonna have to process it.
Well, they build a sewer plant that is way too big. They would love to sell the sewer connections. They need the money. And I said, if Upper Frederick would agree to, would you sell the sewer? They said, absolutely.
Yeah, I know people who live right down the road from there, and their sewer engineer has literally gone knocking on doors, people's houses that don't even have basements, doing some of the high rains, and they're trying to find out why they're overrunning.
Yeah, I can't speak to that. All I can tell you is they would like to sell the sewer capacity. That I can tell you for a fact, because I did meet with them, and the sewer and the township supervisors are connected there, not really autonomous authority and township supervisors. So it's coming from the decision makers, they would sell the EDUs. So I can tell you that because they told me that. I can't go buy them if you're not going to agree for the sewer to go, that wouldn't be prudent.
How would you, so how would you discharge, you know, this?
There would be a
existing
force
sewer?
main that would be determined by, in conjunction with our engineer, that CCAS would approve, that would be a size that would allow for our sewer and Frederick's. And there'd be a force main put in, outside of the power in, but followed down along. There's most of the easements already in place along the river right down to their plant.
So,
So you would have nothing other than a pump station, which we could have that either be HOA or it could go on to New Hanover.
so basically down to the fields,
Yes.
I do know for a fact that there's some people down there that would say no.
Well, it
They
can also
would
follow
like-
the road, you can follow the road too. Either way works.
I want to point out, I've been doing this for 25 years, almost, and I know Vicky's been doing it for just about as long, and I think, Vicky, you'll agree with me. This level of detail is extraordinarily premature for a first planning commission meeting when we have various alternatives for for sewer and water, and a 66-page review letter. We're usually talking about this level of detail after several iterations of the plans.
Why haven't you submitted any, why haven't you brought forth any documentation on that this public water that you're speaking about? And why haven't you brought that before? So if that's an option, why isn't it here on the table right now?
Because, as Tim said, his prior discussions with the township organization were that the township was not interested in public sewer and
The
public
previous
water.
board had.
The previous board wanted to be in the sewer and water business and did not want that because they wanted to take ownership. I hear loud and clear, you don't want to take ownership, I get that. We just need direction. So it would have been counterproductive for me to submit saying, hey, we're gonna tie into water, when the last township group said, no way. You know, I mean, you tell us, hey, come back with letters of will serve by the water authority and the sewer authority, and where their water comes from, we'll go do that. I mean, we just need some direction.
The fact remains that as we stand here tonight, on January 30th, with the state of the application as it is and the reviews as they are, this development can proceed. Again, there might be some units lost, there might be some changes in geometry here and there, but we have determined, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have determined that community on-lot disposal is feasible, and we've determined that using well water is feasible. We've also determined...
You haven't determined that using the well water is feasible.
Yes, we have, we've all studied stuff.
But we don't have that.
I know, but. yeah,
But we have to have that. Look,
Here's a study of
I
how-
don't want to argue about it, I just, we do have to make a decision, and I hear you, you want us to make a decision, really. I hear you loud and clear.
No, what I'm asking you to do, what I'm urging you to do, and what I hope Ms. Kushto will advise you to do, is to recommend to your board, to the governing authority, that they accept the extension so that the application can be allowed to continue through the iterative good faith process that the law requires.
So
These conversations that we're having right now are premature given the state of the township's reviews.
You're right.
Question for you, either or, I don't know who would be able to answer. A couple, when did you drill? What date?
I don't know that, but more than a year ago.
Year?
Summertime.
August.
Okay, I'm sorry, they're saying August,
Everybody-
I'm sorry.
Oh, in August.
They're saying August, I'm sorry.
Okay, now, in the ordinance that I'm sure you're aware of, with the water quality and quantity test that's supposed to be done, you're supposed to notify the neighbors. Did you notify the neighbors that you were drilling?
I don't know who was involved, the,
Okay,
no, I wasn't part of it.
okay,
The township was aware of it.
who in the town was aware of it?
I don't know, I'll find out.
What does the ordinance say you have to do?
I don't know, I didn't do the drilling, I'm just saying, I'm not here, I don't have that
Okay.
answer. Mike, yeah?
Mike.
Yep,
What does the ordinance say has to be done? Do you know?
I do. I have ordinance 2024-3 in front of me
Okay.
right now.
Does it say anything
And
about notifying the neighbors?
it says all property owners with existing wells within 1 mile of a well expected to draw more than 10,000 gallons per day shall be notified by the applicant and given the opportunity to have their well water collected and samples analyzed to determine the baseline data of its composition.
Okay, why do you think our township would have an ordinance like that?
When was that adopted?
This was adopted on October 9th, 2024.
So we drilled before your ordinance. So that ordinance is irrelevant, we did it.
That's
No,
not
no, no, no,
true.
no,
That's
no.
not
You
true.
did it. That ordinance is supposed to be attached to this plan submission.
No,
Wait,
the
yes, it
drilling
is.
took place
It is.
before, no, the drilling, go ahead.
Court reporter can only
Right.
take
The
one person.
drilling happened before your ordinance was in place. How could we even know that you're dreaming of a future ordinance? We drilled it, they just said it was drilled in August, you didn't even adopt this until after August. So how could we comply with an ordinance that didn't exist?
More to the point, if it is, and I keep coming back to this, if it is an identified deficiency in the application, then we should have been, again, the law requires that somebody in the township organization, when the preliminary plan was accepted, say, wait a minute, you didn't submit this, and then give us the opportunities to submit that. That did not happen. Unless I'm mistaken, tonight is the first time that this conversation is happening. We must be given the opportunity to revise and resubmit in response to the township's comments. We're not suggesting that we're not going to provide the information.
I'm not saying you are.
But do you understand my point that if the well drilling was all done before you ever adopted an ordinance, how could we possibly comply with an ordinance that we didn't have and it didn't exist?
And I would like to say too that you can't go out and drill a well without having a permit for it, so there were.
And it would have been public information for us to get the permits.
Right. The point I'm making is the reason the ordinance was adopted was because our water is, our life here. Our water is pristine, is excellent,
Understood.
and our community, not just the board, not just the government, whatever, but our community, our residents, people that live here, unlike you, the people that live here like that water. Now, so we adopted an ordinance that says if you're gonna take out water out of the aquifer in excess of what, 10,000 gallons a day, that you have to do these tests, you have to notify the neighbors and let them know that you're doing this, and that, so that they can get a baseline on their wells, so that we can see if when you draw that water out of there, it affects their wells. How do you go back and do this now, the plan already submitted, with your wells already drilled and with wells being affected in our township?
Because no water's coming out of those wells. It's just a hole in the ground. We will do the pump
So you
test.
didn't pull any water out of the wells then?
For the test we did, sure, it's a test of a
Okay.
period of hours. That was all, a period of hours, then we stopped. And do you see my point, that when this law doesn't exist, when we drill the wells, how can you make us in retro go back and do something based off this law that we didn't even know about? How could we test before we drill when the drilling's already done? You know, the horse was out of the gate before this ordinance was passed. We notified the township. We probably worked with your sewer and water engineer. There were consultants from the township involved in this whole process. It wasn't like we just went out there cowboying. There's a permitting process which requires advertising or whatever it is to make everybody aware it's happening. This was not done in the dark at night. This was done publicly and with everybody's knowledge.
But yet, the results and everything, nothing was submitted with the plan.
Because the well was already drilled. How do we test before we drill when the well is there?
How do you know that the aquifer is going to support
We can
this
still
type-
do it. We can
this
still do
type
it.
of development?
Yeah, we can still do it.
What do you mean you can still do it?
We can still do the well tests.
Why not? There's no water coming out now.
Well,
We'll run
that's
the
what I'm
test.
saying, and that's what I'm asking
Let me
you
restate that,
is,
so we can redo the well test, I'm sorry.
okay, what I'm asking you is, you put all this money into this development, this planning and all this stuff, and you don't know whether or not,
Oh, we know there's plenty of water. We can do the test
you
and
know there's
satisfy
plenty
the
of
concerns.
water and stuff, but you don't know that it's, when you start drawing it, it's gonna affect these people sitting out here.
And we can,
That's what this
I know.
test is for.
and we can redraw the testing, we can re-perform the tests. We can coordinate with the property owners now that that is required under this new ordinance, and we can provide those data to the township. I'm not hearing anybody suggest that that cannot be done.
We'll pump the wells and do the tests. If they weren't required when we did the well, we'll do them now. We don't have an objection to
But they
doing
weren't
it.
required when you submitted the plans.
Are we
Okay,
ready to move
Yeah.
on to public?
we can move on. Thank you.
I do have a question, the water tower. Let me go back to the test here you're talking about, and then remind me about the water tower, right? It's two separate, to go back to what you were talking about there. The ordinance that we're speaking about, ordinance 2024-03,
Yes.
that you said was in October. that doesn't matter, you know, you pumping and doing a well test there at the well itself, it doesn't affect that. That's not, it's a,
But do you understand what I'm saying?
well,
We
let me
did-
finish.
Okay.
What we're trying to do is if a development comes in here, is protect the residents.
Understood.
You know, and to be honest, you know, there's a lot of developers out there that don't follow through with these things, which is why we require this to be done before a preliminary land development plan is submitted. That has nothing to do with the actual pumping and how much water quantity is coming out, whether there's enough water or not. We all know that when you pump, just down the road here, there was a well put in, and the water pumped out of there, and everybody's well water quality changed. After the fact, there was no way for the people to get their well water fixed without fixing it themselves. Many people spend $10,000, you know, just to get this stuff correct, and they have the ongoing maintenance of it. But without two people fighting with water hydrogeologists, you know, nothing so is gonna take place over there. So they just gotta live with it. The reason why this one matters and that other test doesn't matter for this ordinance here is to protect the wells in the township by doing water data baseline collection. You know, so it's not about pumping the water out and monitoring it, although that must be done as well. But you have to give the people, you know, after the water quality has changed, if it does change, you gotta have the baseline.
So let's just play that out. Let's just play that out, because there is a subdivision and land development application that's been accepted by the township and reviewed. The planning commission members and the board liaison comments are, you haven't provided information that was required for the preliminary plan submission. What we're suggesting is, we are more than happy to re-perform the well tests and to provide those data and to coordinate with the residents and to provide those data to the township. Nothing is going to happen at this property until preliminary land development approval is obtained, until outside permits are obtained, and then final land development approval is obtained. That is a long way to go. We're sitting here at the first planning commission meeting following our submission, and we're telling you, we will provide you with these data. We're not suggesting that we will not. So what is the substantive issue here? We're not asking you to recommend approval of the subdivision and land development application tonight. As a matter of fact, quite the opposite. We're saying that you should do nothing.
Well, we're looking at what the law states, and that's what we're.
And I've offered what the law states, and the law is clear that the municipality has an absolute obligation to review the materials in good faith, and not to,
And we are.
and not to wait until January 30th for an application that was submitted on November 1st, and then say, aha, wait a minute, you never submitted your well study. If that was the township's position, we should have been informed of that a long time ago.
You were informed of it, you know, in the application. It's, we all can go on E360 and look at this stuff. It was right up on again, you know, you filled out the form here.
You're asking us to do a well study before we drill the well,
No,
which
No,
is drilled.
I don't think we're getting anywhere with this
No,
issue.
we're not.
So can we just, what was your comment about
The-
the water
the
tower,
other-
which is what you